Welcome to our channel. Here, in the shadows and gloom, we share stories that will definitely not leave you indifferent. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the creepiest stories. If you like them, don't forget to leave a comment and share with your friends. So, ready to plunge into the world of darkness? Then let's get started. I woke up in a cold sweat, sitting in a chair in the semi-darkness of an unknown room. The clammy wetness on my hands and face gave me a twinge of terror. I tried to realize what was happening and where I was, but when I lowered my gaze, panic gripped me. I clutched the knife. What's going on? Why is there a knife in my hands? Why am I covered in blood? Whose blood is this? God, where am I? There was a deafening, suffocating silence in the room, punctuated only by my ragged breathing. It all seemed unreal, like a nightmare, but this nightmare was real. Suddenly I heard footsteps outside the door. They were slow, heavy, and growing closer. Panic came over me like a wave. I couldn't move. It was as if my body had stopped obeying me. Who's there? What's happening? I must remember, but instead I froze, paralyzed with terror. The doorknob began to turn slowly. My name is Emily, and I am 28 years old. I am an ordinary young woman living my life. I work remotely, and working part-time online allows me to not depend on my schedule and enjoy my freedom. Autumn was just beginning to come into its own, and on a rainy evening I was coming home after a party with my friends. My mood was elevated. Even though the weather was overcast, the rain was softly pounding on the roof of the car, creating a cozy atmosphere. I was driving on an empty highway, when suddenly I was blinded for a second in the rearview mirror by the bright light of the headlights behind me. I involuntarily looked back, and for a moment froze with horror. There was a girl in the back seat, her face covered in blood. I hit the brakes, instinctively twisting the steering wheel. The car was thrown sideways, and I was overcome with a feeling of helplessness. At that moment I felt a powerful impact, and everything around me spun. The car flipped over. The last thing I saw before I lost consciousness was the feet of a man walking toward me through the pouring rain, and then darkness swallowed everything. I came to my senses in the hospital room. The light of the lamp was blinding my eyes, and the smell of antiseptic was in my nose. My eyelids felt heavy, and my body felt like it wasn't mine. Every muscle ached. My head ached and my throat was dry. Suddenly, muffled footsteps were heard outside the door. A nurse appeared in the doorway. "How are you feeling?" Her voice was soft but distant. Where am I?" I whispered, trying to focus. "At the hospital. You had a serious accident. You were brought in a week ago." A week ago? Is this some kind of joke? But apparently not. The whole nightmare, the car, the impact, the man, his legs, it was real. My body didn't react like it had before. I tried to lift my arms, but they were wrapped in bandages. "It was a serious accident," the nurse added, looking at my bewilderment, "but you were lucky. You'll be discharged soon." The days in the hospital merged into one long and painful wait. The doctor assured me that all the tests were normal and I could go home. My mind was a jumble of images of the accident, the hospital room, and that man. His legs. Who was he? Why did I see him before I passed out? Soon I was discharged. Returning home should have been a relief, but instead it brought a strange sense of emptiness. It felt like I didn't belong here. Everything looked just as I had left it, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I tried to convince myself that it was just the effects of the accident and stress. Things were calm for the first week. I went back to my remote job, spending time on the computer, doing the usual things, but then little weird things started happening. At first it was little things, my belongings out of place. The jacket I remembered hanging in the closet ended up on the chair. I chalked it up to forgetfulness and fatigue. But then flowers were delivered that I definitely hadn't ordered. Who were these from? I wondered, but there was nothing on the card. I threw them away without giving it much thought. A few days passed and I noticed that my card was charged for some services that I had not purchased. At that moment my heart beat faster. At first I thought that someone had stolen my data. I called the bank to cancel the card. They promised to look into it. And then I saw him. A man standing across the street, looking at my house. I only caught a glimpse of him, but I knew it was no accident. Every time I looked out the window, I felt like he was watching me. The next day, my phone rang. The number was unknown. I didn't answer it right away, but then I decided to pick up. "Hello, Emily," came a creepy voice. "Who is it?" "It's not important. I think we should meet." My heart raced and my palms sweated. I immediately dropped the call. Who was that? How did he know my number? Anxiety began to slowly consume me. I saw him all the time now. He was standing in the parking lot outside the supermarket when I went out with my groceries. He walked past my house when I came back from my walk. Who is he? And why is he following me? I came home one night and saw that the clothes in my closet were scattered. I knew for sure that no one was in the house, but then I saw that one of my favorite sweaters was missing. At that moment, I panicked. I called the police. "I'm being chased by a man," I said in a broken voice. "He's been in my house. He's stealing my things. I'm sure of it." I described his appearance: tall, wearing dark clothes, his face hidden by a hood. The police said they'd send a patrol, but made no guarantees. But I knew in my heart that no one could help me. Since the day I went to the police, life had changed. I tried to return to a normal rhythm, but every sound, every movement in the apartment became a source of anxiety. I stopped feeling safe in my own home. The silence became suffocating, and the shadows dancing on the walls seemed alive. The first night after the call, I went to bed thinking everything was going to be okay. But in the middle of the night, I woke up to a strange sound. It was a rustling sound, like something moving across the floor. I sat up, listening to the silence, and at that moment I remembered the policeman's words. "It's just a joke," but it couldn't be a joke. I stood up and slowly made my way to the door, my heart pounding in my chest. In the kitchen, I saw that the knife drawer was open. I'm a Nachmaril. I left it so. I quickly closed it and went back to the bedroom, feeling fear fill me. During the night, I was unable to sleep. Every rustle in the house made me flinch, and I looked like a ghost in the morning. The following days were even stranger. I noticed that things in the apartment were starting to disappear. Things I had left on the table were suddenly in the bathroom, and some items that I remembered exactly what I had used were just disappearing. I started keeping a journal, writing down everything that happened so I wouldn't go crazy. But the most disturbing thing was that I started getting calls from unfamiliar numbers again. Every time I answered, all I heard on the other end was silence. Sometimes I thought I heard quiet laughter, but that could have just been my imagination. These calls made me feel watched, as if someone was watching my every move. One night, I decided to invite a friend over for dinner, hoping it would help take my mind off my worries. But when she arrived, I noticed that she was anxious too. "Are you okay, Emily? You don't look so good," she asked, fetching a bottle of wine. I tried to assure her that I was fine, but it was hard to tell her about the oddities in the house. I was afraid she'd think I was just making a big deal out of it. We started talking about other things, but even as we laughed, I felt there was danger lurking somewhere in the shadows. At night when she left, I felt like someone was watching me again. I went into my bedroom, and on the table I found flowers, the same roses that had come in the mailbox. The card said, "You are beautiful." I felt a chill run down my spine. How did he know where I lived? Anxiety was building, and I could no longer ignore my feelings. I decided to spend the night with the door lock open, hoping that if someone came in, I'd be able to escape in time. I held my phone tightly in my hand, but at the same time I felt that it wouldn't help. And so, in the darkness, as I tried to sleep, I heard the rustling again. I got out of bed and slowly walked to the door. Outside, the rain was drumming on the roof, giving the illusion of extra noise. I cautiously peered out into the hallway and froze for a moment. Everything seemed calm, but at that moment I noticed something flicker in the corner. I turned sharply and saw a silhouette. My pulse raced faster, and I clamped my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. It was only a shadow, but its presence made me feel like I wasn't alone. In that moment I realized my whole life was spiraling out of control. The morning began with the feeling of the night darkness still pressing in on me. I got out of bed, feeling foggy thoughts swirling in my head, but this time I was determined to figure out what was going on. All day I had been picking myself up piece by piece, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease. But it seemed to me that something in the house wasn't right. Every rustle made me shiver, and even the sunlight streaming through the curtains couldn't dispel my fear. I noticed that the doors in my house were sometimes closed, even though I remembered exactly leaving them open. My belongings began to disappear or change location. The book one was reading ended up in the kitchen cabinet, and my favorite t-shirt was replaced by something completely unfamiliar. Fear crawled into my mind like a shadow, something lurking around the corner. I could hear something moving in the next room. Footsteps rustling, as if someone was lurking, watching me. I walked around the house, checking every nook and cranny, but found nothing but my own reflection in the mirrors, which began to seem alien and wary. In the evening, at the limit of my strength, I realized that I couldn't stay alone anymore. I decided to spend the night at a friend's house, but before I left the house, I needed to call the police. The call was made, and when I described to them my suspicions about the man I thought was stalking me, they promised to come out. As if to confirm my fears, at that time my phone suddenly rang. A familiar number appeared on the screen, the same stranger. Panic gripped me, but I couldn't let myself break down. I quickly hung up the phone, feeling a whirlwind of fear building up inside me. The police arrived rather quickly. I opened the door, unable to hide my excitement. As if I couldn't believe my ears, I heard that the man had been taken into custody. But there was no relief or joy, only more fear. If it wasn't him, then who was following me? The next morning, when I was already home, a policeman rang the doorbell. He looked serious. "Emily, we need to talk," he said. I felt my heart sink as he explained what they had found out. The man in custody was not involved in the stalking. He pulled me out of the car that night and just wanted to talk about what had happened. The doctor said it was too early to talk to her. She needed time. At that moment, a real storm erupted inside of me. If it wasn't him, then who was it? My thoughts whirled around in my head, filling me with panic. I turned to the mirror in horror. In the reflection I saw myself, but with a completely cold stare. It was as if it was alive. Its face reflected no emotion. It looked at me with indifference. Suddenly I noticed blood starting to flow from the reflection's head. I froze in horror, realizing that what I had seen in the car that night was nothing but my own reflection. And at that moment, the reflection said, "You are me." A wave of horror rose inside me, and the next second I was unconscious. I woke up in a cold sweat, sitting in a chair in an obscure room shrouded in semi-darkness. The sticky wetness on my hands and face made me feel terrified. My mind didn't immediately realize what was happening or where I was. I clutched the knife, panic ripening in my heart. Everything came back into a vicious circle, and the shadow of incomprehension once again enveloped me. Alright, so let me start by saying I've never been the type to believe in ghosts or the paranormal. I mean, yeah, I love a good scary movie, but that stuff, it's just stories, right? Well, at least that's what I thought, until this happened. A couple of months ago, I got a new phone. Nothing fancy, just an upgrade because my old one was starting to slow down, the usual. Everything was fine at first: texting, scrolling through social media, taking pictures of my dog, normal stuff. But then one night, something really weird happened. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when my phone buzzed. At first, I figured it was just a notification or something, but when I checked, it wasn't that. My photo gallery had opened up by itself. That was already strange, right? Like my phone had been sitting on the nightstand next to me. How did it just open? Anyway, I looked at the screen, and there was this picture in the gallery that I definitely didn't remember taking. It was a blurry shot of my bedroom, like someone had just pointed the camera at the floor in the dark. I thought maybe I accidentally took it, like a butt dial but with photos. I deleted it and didn't think much of it. The next day, though, things got weirder. I'm scrolling through my phone at work, and boom, there's another picture I never took. This one was clearer, but it was still of my bedroom, and it was taken from this weird angle, like someone was standing in the corner of the room, snapping photos while I slept. I started to get freaked out. Maybe I left my phone unlocked and it took pictures on its own. That's what I told myself. Anyway, but I made sure to keep it locked and face down from then on. I wasn't about to let some glitchy phone ruin my sleep. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I even joked to my friend that my phone was haunted. He laughed it off and told me I was just being paranoid. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. I mean, how could I explain the pictures? So I decided to test something. Before going to bed, I left my phone on the dresser across the room, face up, with the camera facing the ceiling. No way I could accidentally take pictures that way, right? I made sure it was locked, and even turned off the screen. Then I went to sleep. Around 3 a.m. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. My heart was pounding. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't ignore it. When I grabbed my phone, I saw the notification: new photos added to gallery. I swear, my stomach dropped. I opened the gallery, and there were 5 new photos. The first one was of my bedroom again, but it was clearer this time, like way too clear. It wasn't just some accidental shot. It looked deliberate, like someone was framing the room. The second picture, it was me, asleep in bed. I froze. I couldn't breathe. My first thought was that someone had broken in, but my door was locked, and my apartment has cameras. There was no sign of anyone coming or going. But somehow, these pictures existed, and they kept getting closer. The third photo was taken right next to my bed, showing me from an angle that made it clear whoever or whatever took it was standing right beside me. The fourth photo. It was a close-up of my face, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, like someone was hovering over me. And the fifth one. This one still haunts me. It wasn't a picture of me or my room anymore. It was just black. But right in the center of that darkness there was this hand. Pale, almost translucent, with long, bony fingers reaching toward the camera. I threw my phone across the room. I didn't care if it broke at that point. I was completely freaking out. I checked the locks on every door and window, grabbed the baseball bat I keep in the closet, and sat in the living room with the lights on for the rest of the night. The next morning, I called the phone company. figuring maybe it was some weird software glitch, right? But when I brought my phone in and showed the photos to the guy at the store, he looked just as freaked out as I was. He said he'd never seen anything like it before and suggested maybe it was some kind of virus. So they wiped my phone, reinstalled everything from scratch. And for a while, things were normal again. No more weird photos, no strange activity, just life as usual. I started to think maybe it was over whatever it was. But a few nights ago, the buzzing started again. This time I didn't check it right away. I just let it buzz, heart pounding in my chest. When I finally worked up the nerve to look at my phone, I saw the same notification, new photos added to gallery. I opened the gallery, and there was just one new picture. It wasn't of me or my bedroom this time. It was of the hallway outside my apartment, taken from the inside. So yeah, that's my story. I still don't know what's going on or how those pictures keep appearing, but I'm honestly too freaked out to do anything else about it. I've been sleeping with my phone turned off now, hoping that'll stop it. But every night I can't shake the feeling that something or someone is watching me. Has anyone else experienced something like this? Please let me know in the comments if you have any ideas or explanations, because at this point I'm desperate for answers. And if your phone ever starts taking pictures you didn't snap, maybe it's time to get a new one. Okay, so I'm not the type to post stuff like this. I'm a pretty rational person, I guess. But I have no idea what the hell happened in my house a few weeks ago, and I can't shake it. It feels like something's still wrong. I don't know, maybe I'm just being paranoid, but I need to tell someone. It all started when I moved into this old house about a year ago. The house itself isn't anything special, a basic 2-story in a quiet, boring neighborhood. You know, the kind of place where you wave to your neighbors but don't really talk to them, unless you have to. Anyway, it's old, like creaky floorboards and weird drafts, kind of old, but I got it for a good price, and it's got character, you know. The basement, though, that's a different story. It's unfinished and kind of a mess. I'm talking about bare concrete floors, exposed pipes, the works. I usually just use it for storage because honestly it gives me the creeps. I always felt like someone was watching me down there, but I figured it was just in my head because basements are naturally creepy, right? So fast forward to a few weeks ago. I was down there rummaging through some boxes, looking for an old charger or something, when I noticed something strange. There was a door. Now, before you say anything, I know what you're thinking. Of course there's a door. It's a basement, but listen, this door wasn't there before. I've been in and out of this basement 100 times. I know every inch of it. This was a new door, like one of those old wooden ones with the black iron hinges. It looked ancient, like it didn't belong in a house built in the 70s. I stood there for a minute just staring at it, trying to figure out how it could have possibly gotten there. My first thought was that maybe I just never noticed it before. Maybe it was always there, and I was just being an idiot. But something deep inside me told me that wasn't the case. This door was new, or at least new to me. So of course, like an idiot in every horror movie, I decided to open it. Now, this is where things start getting weird. I grabbed the handle. It was cold, way colder than it should have been. I mean, yeah, basements are cold, but this was like the handle had been sitting in a freezer for hours. When I finally turned it and pushed the door open, I was hit with this smell, like damp earth and rot. It was so strong I almost gagged. The weird thing was, on the other side of the door there was nothing, just darkness. I don't mean like a dark room or an unlit hallway, I mean nothing. No walls, no floor, no ceiling. Just pure, unbroken blackness, like looking into a void. I tried to shine my phone's flashlight into it, but the light didn't reach more than a few feet before it got swallowed up. I was too freaked out to even think about stepping inside. I just stood there, staring into the abyss, when I heard something. At first it was faint, like a low whisper, just at the edge of hearing. I thought maybe it was the wind or something, but no, this was different. It was like someone was whispering my name, but from deep inside the darkness. The longer I stood there, the louder it got. And not just my name anymore, there were other voices too, dozens of them. Some were whispering, some were shouting, all overlapping like they were fighting to be heard. I freaked out and slammed the door shut. I wasn't going to wait around to see what was on the other side. But the second I closed it, the whispers stopped. Just like that. Silence. Now, you'd think that would be the end of it, right? I'd lock the basement door, go upstairs, and try to forget it ever happened. And that's what I tried to do. But the door didn't stay closed. Every time I went down to the basement after that, it was open. And each time, that horrible smell was stronger. I started having nightmares, 2 really vivid ones. I'd be in the basement, standing in front of the door, and I could hear those voices again, calling to me, begging me to open it. But in the dreams, when I did open the door, something would reach out, something cold and slimy, and pull me into the darkness. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, but the fear wouldn't go away even after I woke up. I tried to ignore it for a while, but after a few sleepless nights, I couldn't take it anymore. So I went back down to the basement, determined to just seal the damn thing up. I grabbed some boards, nails, and a hammer, and went to work. But when I got down there, the door was gone. Not just closed, I mean gone. No sign it had ever been there. I searched the whole basement, knocking on walls, trying to find some hidden entrance, but there was nothing. No door, no hinges, no cold handle. Just concrete like it had always been. That was 2 weeks ago, and I haven't seen the door since. But I swear, sometimes in the middle of the night, I hear the whispers again, just faintly coming from the floorboards under my bed. I don't know what that door was or where it led, but I have a feeling it's not really gone. Maybe it's just waiting for me to open it again. So, yeah, that's it. I'm not even sure what to do at this point. Maybe I'm going crazy, but I can't shake the feeling that whatever was behind that door is still lurking somewhere, waiting. Has anyone ever experienced anything like this? What do you guys think it could have been? Let me know in the comments, because I need answers. And if you're ever down in your basement and see a door that wasn't there before, maybe don't open it. I've always been a deep sleeper. Nothing wakes me up, rain, thunder, dogs barking outside, none of it. So when my phone rang at exactly 3:33 a.m., I was startled. You know how you can wake up and feel completely disoriented? That was me, sitting up in bed, staring at my phone screen, blinking in the dark. The call was from a number I didn't recognize. Now, normally, I don't pick up calls from random numbers. I mean, who does, right? But for some reason, maybe it was how late it was or the fact that the number looked weird, I felt this strange urge to answer it. My thumb just kind of moved on its own. "Hello," I mumbled, my voice all groggy. Nothing. Complete silence. I was about to hang up, thinking it was some late-night prank or pocket dial, when suddenly I heard it. This faint whisper, like someone was standing far away from the phone, barely audible. "Can you hear me?" I froze. The voice, it was familiar, but I couldn't place it. You know the weird feeling when you think you know someone, but you can't quite remember where from? Yeah, it was like that. My mind raced through everyone I knew, old friends, exes, random people, but nothing clicked. I shook off the fog of sleep and asked, "Who is this?" Again, silence. But I could hear someone breathing on the other end, not heavy or creepy, but just there, like they were waiting for something. I stayed on the line for a few more seconds, hoping for an answer, but there was nothing. Eventually I hung up, chalking it up to a weird wrong number and trying to go back to sleep. But the next morning, that call was still on my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that it meant something, though I couldn't explain what. So just out of curiosity, I tried calling the number back. You can probably guess what happened. The number didn't exist. I got one of those automated messages. "The number you have dialed is not in service." I didn't think too much of it at the time. I mean, numbers get disconnected or spoofed all the time, right? But then, the calls started coming again. A couple of days later, again at 3:33 a.m., my phone rang. Same unknown number, same weird feeling in my gut, like I had to answer it. This time I picked up a little quicker. "Hello?" No response at first, just that same breathing. But then the voice came again, a little clearer this time. "You made a mistake." Now, I don't know about you, but when a random voice on the phone says something like that in the middle of the night, it's enough to make your skin crawl. My heart was pounding, but I managed to get out. "Who are you? What do you want?" For a second, I thought I heard a soft chuckle, almost like whoever or whatever was on the other end found the whole thing funny. Then, just as the silence started to stretch out and get really uncomfortable, the voice whispered, "We're coming for you." I hung up so fast, my hand was shaking. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind was racing, thinking of all the weird, unexplainable stuff I'd heard about ghosts, demons, even aliens. I tried to convince myself it was some elaborate prank, but deep down I knew it wasn't. There was something too real about that voice, too chilling. For the next few nights I stayed up, just waiting for the call. My phone sat on my nightstand, face up, as I stared at the clock, heart pounding as it inched closer to 3:33 a.m., and like clockwork, the call came. Every single night. Always the same number, always the same voice. Sometimes the voice would repeat the same phrases, "Can you hear me?" or "You made a mistake." But then, after about a week of this, the voice started saying other things, darker things. Things like "There's no escape and you know what's coming." And every time I tried to call back, I got the same damn message: "The number you have dialed is not in service." At this point, I started feeling like I was losing it. I mean, who could I even tell about this? My friends. They'd think I was crazy. The cops, what was I supposed to say? Hey, I'm getting creepy calls at exactly 3:33 every night from a number that doesn't exist. Yeah, that would go over well. So I kept it to myself. I tried everything, blocking the number, turning off my phone at night, even getting a new SIM card. Nothing worked. Somehow the calls always came through. I even stopped sleeping. Every night I just sit there in the dark, waiting for my phone to ring. I figured maybe if I didn't answer, if I ignored it long enough, it would stop. But then, 2 nights ago, something changed. The call came, as usual, at 3:33 a.m. I didn't pick up. I thought maybe this time, if I don't engage, it'll go away. But then my phone, it started buzzing again. Not a regular call though. It was a voicemail notification. My heart stopped. They'd left me a message. I didn't want to listen to it, but at the same time I had to know. With my hands shaking, I opened the voicemail. It was only 3 words. We're outside now. I swear, I've never felt fear like that in my life. My whole body went cold. I threw the covers off and ran to the window. But when I looked out, there was nothing. Just the empty street, the wind blowing through the trees. But I knew. I felt it. They were out there. Now I don't sleep. I can't. Every night I sit by the phone staring at it, dreading the moment it lights up. I keep telling myself maybe it's all in my head, maybe it's some messed up prank. But deep down, I know it's not. So if you ever get a call from an unknown number at 3:33 a.m., don't answer it. Trust me. You don't want to know what's on the other end. You ever have a weird neighbor? You know, the kind that gives you the creeps for no particular reason? Yeah, that was mine. The guy lived right across the hall from me in this rundown apartment building. I never really paid much attention to him at first. He was quiet, kept to himself, and didn't even acknowledge me when we passed in the hallway. Fine by me. But about 2 months ago, that all changed. It started small. I'd hear knocking in the middle of the night, just a single, sharp knock. At first I figured it was someone messing around, like some drunk guy stumbling home. But then it started happening every night, exactly at 3:15 a.m. One knock. Always the same. At first I tried to ignore it. I mean, who's gonna get worked up over a knock, right? But then I started noticing more strange things. I'd wake up to find my front door unlocked, even though I was sure I locked it before bed. Sometimes my window would be open, just a crack, even though it was freezing outside. One night I woke up to that same knock, 3:15 a.m., right on the dot. But this time it didn't stop after one knock. It was different. I got out of bed and tiptoed to the door, holding my breath, hoping it was just a one-off thing. Then I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. My heart raced. I was standing right in front of the door now, trying to peek through the peephole. But the thing is, there was no one there, just the dimly lit hallway stretching out in both directions. I almost laughed at myself. I mean, come on, there's no one here. It's probably just the building creaking or something, right? But then it happened again, even louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. I couldn't help it. I flung the door open. Nothing. Absolutely no one in the hallway. My heart was in my throat, and I just stood there, staring into the empty space. I was starting to think I was going crazy. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me, even though the hall was completely empty. I locked the door and went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easy after that. The next day, I ran into my neighbor in the hall. He gave me this weird, almost knowing smile. You know when someone looks at you and it feels like they know something you don't? Yeah, it was that kind of smile. He didn't say anything, just stared at me as I passed him by. After that, things got worse. I'd hear scratching at my door in the middle of the night, light taps like nails dragging across the wood, and the knocking, it got louder, more insistent. Bang, bang, bang. I started getting paranoid, jumping at every little sound. I couldn't sleep. Every night it was the same thing, scratching, knocking, and my door somehow unlocking itself. I even bought a second lock, but the next morning, unlocked again. And one night, after another sleepless few hours, I decided I'd had enough. I wasn't going to sit there and wait for something worse to happen. I stormed across the hall, banging on my neighbor's door. No answer. I banged again, harder this time. Still nothing. That's when I noticed something weird. There was this smell coming from under his door. It was thick, almost sweet, like rotting fruit. I gagged a little, covering my nose as I leaned closer to the door. I was about to knock one more time when I heard something on the other side, a soft, muffled thump, like someone had dropped something heavy. I bolted back to my apartment. I locked the door, threw the chain on, and shoved a chair under the knob just for good measure. I wasn't about to stick around and find out what was going on in there. But of course it didn't stop. That night I was jolted awake by the loudest knock yet. It was like someone was pounding on my door with a sledgehammer. I shot up, heart racing, and ran to the door. But this time, when I looked through the peephole, I saw something. It was my neighbor, standing right there in the hallway, staring straight at me. His face was wrong. It was pale, almost gray, like he hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was hanging slightly open, as if he was trying to say something but couldn't get the words out. I didn't open the door. I just stared at him, frozen. Then, without breaking eye contact, he slowly raised his hand and knocked. Once, twice, 3 times. I don't know what came over me, but I just started screaming at him. "What do you want? What the hell are you doing?" He didn't move. He didn't even blink. Just stood there staring at me, knocking, over and over again. I called the cops after that. I told them about the knocking, the scratching, the smell, everything. When they showed up, they checked his apartment and found it empty. Completely empty. Like no one had ever lived there. No furniture, no clothes, nothing. Just a bare, dusty apartment that looked like it had been abandoned for years. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, the knocking stopped. But every night I still lie awake, staring at my door, waiting for that sound. Sometimes I think I hear it just faintly, like an echo in the back of my mind. Knock, knock, knock. 9. And every time I close my eyes, I see my neighbor's face, standing in the hallway, staring at me through the peephole, waiting. Outro. So yeah, that's my story. I don't know what was going on with my neighbor, or why the cops found his apartment empty, but I can't shake the feeling that it's not over. If any of you have experienced something like this or have any ideas about what was happening, let me know in the comments, because honestly, I'm still trying to figure it all out and I haven't slept well in weeks.